a 5-goal thriller in the Klassiker. 3-2 it finishes in favour of Bayern Munich against Dortmund. And Rafa Honigstein joins us now to reflect on the game. Rafa, good to see you. I suppose the big question that everybody is asking is the title race. This puts Bayern Munich now 11 points clear at the top of the Bundesliga. Is that enough for you to say that Bayern Munich have won the Bundesliga and the title race is just about done and dusted after that result?
They will be winning the league. I don't think there was much doubt before the game. I don't think there's much doubt left after this game. You could see the celebrations, how much it meant for Bayern. I think a point would have been good enough with 8 points, going into the final third of the season being a good cushion, but now 11. I can't see this Bayern team dropping that many points, even if a long run in the Champions League were to come. I don't think Dortmund have any chance. They're playing a nearly perfect season domestically, and yet they find themselves 11 points clear, or adrift, I should say, and that is the gap in terms of Bayern's brilliance this year.
Rafa, what's the difference, do you think, between these two teams in the terms of quality and the level between Borussia Dortmund and Bayern Munich? Like, obviously, it's first, second. They could have closed the gap to 5 today, but we all felt like it's a long shot. Well, what's the actual gap between them?
I'm not sure 11 points is quite as big between them as the table says, but there is a clear gap in quality. I mean, just think about how many Dortmund players would get into this Bayern starting 11. I don't think a single one. We've had years where Dortmund had Haaland and Bellingham and Sancho at his best, and before that they had Lewandowski and Kagawa and Hummels. This Dortmund team are solid. They perform really well domestically. They're hard to play against. They find ways to win games, even if their football isn't pretty in the Bundesliga. But they don't have these superstars, or at least superstar talents, that gave them the X factor in recent years. And that's why they can't quite keep up with the Bayern team that's been very, very consistent and have the quality. Korbel was asked, the goalkeeper, what is really the difference between those two sides? And he said, it's Bayern's quality. They had 5 shots or 6 and they score 3 goals. We've had a similar amount of chances and we score a couple. And that is really the difference. Bayern just have better players individually. And as a result, collectively, they're a much better side as well.
Rafa, I think we know in the Bundesliga what to expect more from Bayern Munich, but what about in terms of the Champions League and moving forward in some of the big matches? The one Achilles heel I see from the outside looking in is the inability to keep clean sheets. For a team that's so in control with such a good roster, such good depth, so many good pieces, it seems like the attack it's more attack heavy than it is defensive, and they haven't kept as many clean sheets as you would have imagined.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They have been leaky, especially since the winter break. Is it a question of, sloppiness? They're going into every game knowing that they will probably win a game, that they will probably score another 2-3 goals. Maybe that lack of focus, maybe that lack of concentration leads to those goals. They conceded 2 against Frankfurt. They conceded again 2 against Dortmund. I think as a structure, in terms of their game plan, they look more advanced than they did last year. Last year was very much Vincent Kompany's first season. It was very high risk. They played man v man all over the pitch at times, and they had these huge gaps. Now those goals don't follow from those counter-attacking situations, but they come when Bayern switch off a little bit. And I think it can happen when you have the dominance, you have the possession, and deep down it's going to be hard not to win the league. I'd like to think that the focus and the concentrations level will be higher in the Champions League. They have been, by and large, pretty solid, especially against the really good sides, the defeat against Arsenal notwithstanding. So, again, I'd like to think, if you take an optimistic view, that Bayern will know that they need to be a lot more clinical in their own box when it comes to those big games.
Mm-hmm. The good news for Bayern is obviously they've just been so dominant, haven't they, Rafa, in the attack? Here is just a look at the front three: Michael Olise, Luis Diaz and Harry Kane. They've accounted for 72 goals in all competitions. Sometimes we're talking about the best attack in the Champions League, in world football. Are these three getting the recognition that you deserve? Is this one of the best trios in world football right now?
Yeah, they are. And then the fourth one is either Musiala or Gnabry or maybe even Leonard Carl. So not a bad one behind them either. And they have the quality. They've been very lucky, or you might say they've managed their workload really well, that none of them have really missed any significant part of the season yet. They're hoping that they can keep everyone fit, because once you take one or two out of them, then it becomes a different story. Bayern don't have a deep squad. They have a great first, let's say, 14 or 15. After that, the quality really drops rapidly. And again, going into a very tough draw, maybe not so much Atalanta, but then, it's either Real Madrid or Man City, and then it's probably going to be Liverpool. That's going to be the hardest thing, I think, to keep this fairly small squad healthy and firing and maintaining that level of excellence when it really matters in April and May. But yes, in terms of the numbers, also in terms of the fluidity and the goals that they score, those three, I think, should be in the conversation as certainly the best functioning attack right now in European football.
Rafa, let's just stick to that front three right now. Do you believe that Harry Kane will break Lewandowski's goal record for Bayern Munich?
I think it's very possible. I think the only thing that might work against him is that as Bayern focus more and more on the Champions League and manage that huge gap that they've opened up in the league, maybe he'll be more on the bench and Vincent Kompany will try to manage the squad more with rotation. And I can see Bayern, just as they did a little bit under Guardiola, when they dominated for 3 years, trying to maybe not kill themselves in the league. And I think that might work a little bit against him. But if he continues to play, and he's the kind of player that wants to play every game, and if Bayern continue with their recent run of having 3 goals almost every single game, and he scores at least 2, then yes, it's hard to see him not breaking the record. But I think, again, the Champions League might work against him. But if it does, it's kind of good news for Bayern, because it means that they're going deep. And of course, that's what they really want.
Rafa, so based on today's result, now that the Bundesliga's title is pretty much wrapped in a bow for Bayern Munich, looking ahead for Champions League, what's the feeling like in Germany? Do they look at Bayern Munich as one of the favourites to win this Champions League?
Yeah, they do. They think they have a chance. As we said, and you can see it here, the draw is really difficult. They're on the much tougher side of the draw. All the winners in the last 10 years are not on that side of the draw. So that shows you just in terms of quality, at least recent quality, that it's going to be hard. It's hard to imagine that, only one of Real Madrid, Bayern, Man City, Liverpool, PSG and Chelsea is going to make the final. But that's who they have to knock out. And I think you have to look at their performance in the group stage, where they finished second, in their overall sort of underlying performance levels when it comes to XG and so on. And they are rated, I think, as up there with Real Madrid and Arsenal, maybe in that order. And that's where they belong. Now, we know in the Champions League, it comes down to single games, to injuries, to red cards, to refereeing decisions going your way or not away. But they're in with a chance if they can keep everyone fit. Just to reiterate the point, when they went into that crucial game against Inter, they had too many injuries. They couldn't quite do it. If they keep everyone fit, I think they're in with a shout.
Rafa, speaking of Champions League, obviously we saw Dortmund go out at the expense of Atalanta after being up in the first leg. Where does that leave Dortmund this season then, if we're saying that the title race is wrapped up and they're out of the Champions League at this point in the competition? Because it was only a few years ago they made it all the way to the Champions League final. Is it still a successful season for Dortmund if they just finish in second place and qualify for the Champions League next season?
I mean, qualifying without any problem for the Champions League is great, and it'll be seen as a step forward for Niko Kovac. But of course, the season effectively over before February is over, and that is hard to take for Dortmund, for a club that want to challenge, and especially going out in the cup against Leverkusen. That is the one that really hurts, because winning the Bundesliga we know is really hard. Winning the Champions League is probably beyond them, but the cup is a genuine, realistic option every year, and they really should have done a little bit better. I think there is still a sort of underlying discontent, not so much with the form, which is great, and the points, but the sense that they're perhaps not playing the kind of free-flowing, exciting football that the people on the South Stand wanted Dortmund in the yellow wall. And if it doesn't, you play results football without getting the results, at least not being competitive in terms of trophies, I think it's harder for Dortmund then to kind of know where they are. They've lost their identity a little bit, I feel, especially without these exciting players that they used to have over the last 10, 15 years. And I think they need to reinvent themselves a little bit. But the good news, if you will, is that this gives them now a lot of time to already think about next season, because the season is over, but it's over in a position of stability when it comes to the Champions League next year. And I think they could use this time now to really think, what can we do to bring that excitement and X factor back next season?
Rafa, just before we let you go, obviously we've seen the torrid time that Italian teams have had in the Champions League recently. In your power rankings, where would you rank Serie A alongside the Bundesliga and some of the top leagues in Europe?
I think there's not much difference. If you look at the race for the 5th place in the Champions League, Italy gained some ground, then they lost some ground. Germany are just marginally ahead, but Spain are really closely behind them, and even Portugal. So there is this tussle behind the Premier League of who is sort of the best second league, at least in the running season. And Dortmund throwing it away was a huge blow to the Bundesliga, but they're still in a good position to get that 5th spot for next season. And I think that kind of accurately reflects where things are. There is quality, of course, in Serie A, and we saw Inter being in the Champions League finals twice year running. That shows you that this is a decent side. But I don't think you have a team like Bayern in Serie A at the moment. So very hard, I think, to look at the whole league, as it were. But when it comes to the top quality, I think Bayern are just slightly more ahead this season for sure than anything that Italy can muster.
Do you agree with that, Grella?
I'll get back to you, Rafa, on that one. It gets me now when we're down. What am I supposed to say? That we're the best? Of course I can. I agree. I don't think there is a Bayern in Italy. I can't argue that.
Rafa, when there's no response from Grella, he says we'll have to talk about this at a later date. So that's how you know.
We'll speak after the Atalanta Bayern game again.
Thank you, Rafa, so much. Good to see you. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
So that is Bayern Munich, 11 points clear at the top of the Bundesliga table. It might be a steady run-in for the Bavarians to close out the domestic campaign. Let's see what they can do in the Champions League as well.